Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jacob Lowenbrand and I'm the Managing Director of BrightVision. And you have logged into a webinar in our webinar series at BrightVision that's targeting different marketing topics. And today we have the great honor to have with us the marketing communications expert specialized especially in email marketing, and that's Nancy Harhat. Welcome so much, Nancy, to us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you here. I will just briefly present you and then I will let you present you more in depth, but you are a looked after and highly regarded speaker on marketing communication and digital communications in email marketing. You have been talking at Inbound conference and different marketing conferences all over America and Europe, and for the Scandinavian audience, you have recently been to one of the larger digital marketing conferences in Sweden called Webdagarna in late March. So a few of us might have actually come across you there where you were one of the keynote and highlighted sessions. So we're definitely going to enjoy our session here today, that you will talk about 10 human behavior hacks that will change the way you create emails. A very interesting topic, since email is such an important part of all our communication and will be for a long time in the future as well. A few notes about BrightVision before we leave over to Nancy and her content. BrightVision is a consulting company focused in the Nordic countries, where we help technology and IT companies with lead generation, qualified lead generation, both in outbound practices as well as inbound practices. And that have we been doing for over 15 years now, and we're doing it locally in each country with native speaking teams. And these are a few of the companies that we represent and do campaigns for. And we hope this is one way that we can broaden our competence together by inviting, for example, this time Nancy to share her content and insights in these areas of digital communication, which is a very important part of the stuff we do for different clients. So Nancy, with that said, I would like to give you the controls of GoToMeeting here. And as a short information as well, as probably most of you in the audience know, you can ask questions in the GoToWebinar panel. There is a box called questions there. I will keep track of that and we'll try to moderate them. If there is an immediate question that needs to be answered, I try to do that. Otherwise, we will save the questions for the end so Nancy can go over her content and then we can have a discussion afterwards. So please ask questions. I'm sure you will experience a lot of questions that are relevant and that Nancy can help you sort out. We would also just say that you will get a recording of this webinar afterwards. So if you miss something, you will have it sent to you as a recorded webinar afterwards. Okay, Nancy, I make you the presenter now. So there you go. Take us away. What do you have for us, Nancy?
There we go. Okay. Oh. There we go. All right. So thank you, Jacob, and thank you, BrightVision. I'm delighted to be with you today. And hello, everyone. Welcome to 10 Human Behavior Hacks that will change the way you create email. So for today's agenda, we'll be covering words that work like magic in subject lines, 2 ways to position your message for fast response, the ripple effect of the consistency principle, why you'll sell more using social proof, when negative can deliver positive results, how availability bias turns doubters into buyers, what instantly makes you look better than the competition, the one thing to say to increase response, the journalist's secret that boosts email readership, and finally, which days are best for success, and that's not going to be what you think. So I hope this sounds good to you in terms of an agenda, because this is what I've prepared for today. So let's get started, although before we do, there's one thing that you should know, and that is everyone relies on decision-making shortcuts. So what's a decision-making shortcut? Well, it's an automatic, instinctive, reflexive behavior. Humans have developed these over the millennia as a way to conserve mental energy, because we couldn't possibly weigh every bit of information before making a decision, or we'd never get around to making any. So we've developed these hardwired behaviors. And what happens is we kind of go through life, we cruise along on autopilot, and we encounter certain situations, or what a researcher would call certain stimuli, and we just default to these hardwired behaviors, giving them little to no thought. And the reason this is so important to us as email marketers is if we know that people have a tendency to just default to decisions, we can use that in our email strategies and in our email creative. We can use what social scientists have proven about human behavior in order to influence it. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. I'd like to share with you 10 email hacks that do just that, that tap into what social scientists and behavioral economists have found about how people behave. So, hack number 1, words that work like magic in subject lines. Although honestly, what I could have started with is simply the idea that words work in subject lines. Words work in subject lines. And you may wonder why I'm saying that, but let me show you a couple of examples. Here we've got a terrific restaurant, and they're having a wonderful promotion, and yet their subject line says, enter subject line here. They literally forgot to put their subject line in. So no one is going to know about this great deal that the restaurant has. Because when you see a subject line that says, enter subject line here, A, you have no idea what the email is about, but B, and perhaps more importantly, you think it could be spam, or at the very least, this marketer didn't care enough to even put a subject line in. Why am I going to bother to open the email and see what they have to say? It's not going to be worth the time and effort. And you would be surprised how often this happens. As a matter of fact, I want to share one more example with you. This happens to be one of my favorites. It's for practical applications of mindfulness in daily life. And of course, the subject line reads, enter subject line here. So clearly this company that was offering this class in practical applications of mindfulness in daily life should probably take the class, because they forgot to put their subject line in. So I'm going on and on about subject lines. I'm focusing on them for a very specific reason, and that is they drive opening rates. When someone gets your email, they have 2 things to decide whether or not to open it, 2 things to help them decide. One is the sender line, and the other is the subject line. And I believe the subject line has even more influence over whether or not somebody opens an email. Some people would argue that it's the sender line, but I think that even if you don't recognize the sender, if that subject line is intriguing enough or relevant enough or beneficial enough, you're going to open it. So sender line and subject line both influence opening rates, and I think that subject lines have a huge influence in having people decide to open your email. The other thing you want to think about with your subject line is you want to keep it to about 35 characters. And the reason for this is over half of emails are opened first on mobile devices. And what that means is we have that much less real estate as marketers to display our subject line. So we need to be succinct, we need to be concise, we need to be short. If we're not, if we're a little bit too long, what can happen is our subject line gets cut off and we don't convey the information that we want to convey. In fact, we may even convey something we didn't intend to. Here we have an email from a daily recipe site, and they say, here are 50 genius ways to cook pot. Now, pot is slang for marijuana, and so you can imagine some people would be very excited when they see this subject line, and they would eagerly open the email, but then they would be disappointed to find that there were recipes to cook potatoes. And here's another example. We have Gartner, and they're having an exclusive presentation on marketing something, but probably not this. So again, you want to try to keep those subject lines short so that you're conveying what you mean to convey. So now let's return to the original idea, which is words that work like magic in subject lines. And the words that work really, really well, the words that work like magic in subject lines are something that I call eye magnet words. And I call them eye magnet words because they can literally attract the human eye. They can attract the human eye like a magnet. And there's a lot of research that's gone into this. There have been in-market tests, eye tracking studies, heat mapping studies. Some neuroscientists even put people into fMRI machines, flash different words in front of their faces, and look to see what parts of their brains light up. And all of these tests indicate the same thing, that there are some words that are more important than others, some words that can literally pull the human eye in. So at this point you might be thinking, all right, Nancy, what are they? Well, I'm going to share some of them with you. One of those words is the word new. In fact, new is considered one of the top 5 persuasive words according to Copyblogger. And the reason for this is the human brain craves news and novelty. We're constantly looking for something new, something novel, because as we find it, it activates the pleasure center in our brains, and that releases dopamine, which feels good. So as a result, we're always on the lookout for the next new thing. So using words like new, now, introducing, announcing, finally, soon, those are all great eye magnet words for your subject lines because they'll pull the human eye in. They promise that there's something new on the horizon. Another great word is the word free. As a matter of fact, free has incredible pulling power. There was a time when you wanted to avoid the word free because it would trip the spam filters. However, these days, spam filters are triggered by completely different algorithms, and a company called World Data ran a study, and they found for the last 5 years, free has been one of the top performing subject line words. The reason for this is very interesting, and it has to do with how we respond to the word free. Dan Ariely is a Duke University professor. He's a noted behavioral economist, and he's also the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Predictably Irrational. And in that book, he devotes an entire chapter to the pulling power of the word free. And what he says is that free creates such an emotional charge in us that we place far greater value on things that are free than we should. When we see something that's free, we want it, we go for it. Whereas if there was a cost associated with that thing, we would probably, in some cases, not even bother with it. But if it's free, that changes everything. So free creates a very strong emotional charge. And in market test, it will give you a lift in your opening rates. So using the word free is a great eye magnet word for your subject lines. Another terrific eye magnet word is your name, or since you're an email marketer, it's your target's name, okay, the name of your target. In fact, Experian showed that you can get a double-digit lift in your opening rates just by having somebody's name in the subject line, by personalizing that subject line. Of course, you can personalize in the subject line. You can also personalize in the body of the email. And as good email marketers, we know that personalization doesn't just stop with somebody's name. You can make an email more personalized, more customized, more relevant by using other demographic information. So you can use their name. You can also use things like postal codes. You can use names of cities or states or towns. Here I happen to live in Massachusetts, so you see Massachusetts in the email. You also see my postal code, and when I see that, I think, oh, this is specifically meant for me. It's much more relevant. So in addition to using demographic information, we can also personalize based on behavioral information, past purchase behavior, self-reported behavior, things like that. Let me give you an example. This is something that I received from a company called Living Social. And they say, we picked this for you, Elizabeth Arden. We're not kidding, exclamation point. And so, of course, I got very excited because I have shopped at Living Social before, and I do like Elizabeth Arden products. And I thought, wow, they've picked something just for me. I'm very excited. I couldn't wait to open it. And then I opened it, and I found out that what they picked just for me was Elizabeth Arden Anti-Aging Cream, Wrinkle Cream, okay? Suddenly I was not very excited. In fact, I was very disappointed. So my one word of caution to you is, while it's great to personalize emails, and it's terrific to use the data that you have in order to make them more relevant, before you push send, just think for a moment about the impact it's going to have on the recipient. Make sure that the data that you're using to customize a message is in fact a message that the recipient's going to want to hear. I was not particularly happy with anti-aging serum. But by and large, as a rule of thumb, customization works very well. Okay, another terrific eye magnet word is the word secret. And you can get an increase in your opening rates simply by having the word secret in your subject line. And the reason for this is very interesting. Social scientists have found that people are more persuaded by information they believe is not readily available. So people are more persuaded by information they believe is not readily available. So using the word secret, for example, in tests at least, has shown that you can get an 11% open rate, 11% increase in your opening rates. And again, the reason is people believe that information that's, people are more persuaded by information they believe is not readily available. So using secret is one great way to do that, but there are other ways. You can say a sneak peek. You can say a behind-the-scenes look. You can say an insider's perspective or insider's view, but anything that suggests that you have information that not everybody else has, that's not widely available, is going to be really good in terms of getting people to open your emails. And our final, here we go. Our final iMagnet word is the word alert. And the reason we pay attention to the word alert is alert signals danger to us. And human beings are hardwired to always be on the lookout for danger. We're always on the lookout for danger. We always, move towards pleasure and away from pain. We're constantly on the lookout for danger. And the word alert makes us think that there might be potential danger on the horizon. And so when we see that word alert, it focuses all of our attention. And that's why the word alert is such a good word to use in your subject lines, because it's going to focus people's attention. So again, with subject lines, you want to use these iMagnet words because they're going to work really hard to attract attention to your email, and you want to front load them, okay? So you want to use the iMagnet words and you want to put them at the beginning of your subject lines where they have the opportunity to do the most work and where they're less likely to be cut off. All right, our second human behavior hack is 2 ways to position your message for fast response. And these days in email marketing, we of course want response, but it's no longer enough to just get response. It's important to get that fast response. We want to get people to reply, and we want to get them to reply quickly because that helps us with our return on investment. And there are a couple of ways that you can increase the likelihood that people are going to reply quickly to you. And they both have to do with the principle of scarcity. And let me explain to you the principle of scarcity. Essentially, if something is readily available, we may or may not be interested. If we're interested, we take advantage. If we're not, we don't. It's as simple as that. However, just let somebody know that that something is only going to be available for a certain amount of time, or it's only going to be available to a certain group of people, and that changes everything. Suddenly it's like a switch flips in us, and it makes us want it and want it badly. So we might have maybe been interested, maybe not before, but when we know that only certain people can have it, or it's only available for a certain amount of time, suddenly we want it. And that's known as the principle of scarcity, the 2 halves of it: urgency, available for a certain amount of time, and exclusivity, available to a certain group of people. If you use either of those in your subject lines, you can expect a 22% lift in your opening rates, according to the Email Institute. So let's take a look at how we can do that. So here we have final notice, don't miss your chance. So they're really underscoring the urgency there. Or we have call now for a $500K in life insurance. So call now is a great way to use urgency if you don't have a particular deadline. If you have a deadline, if you have an expiration date, that's a great way to underscore urgency. Excuse me. But if you don't happen to have a deadline or an expiration date, saying call now or call today also accomplishes the same thing. It drives urgency. Another terrific way to underscore urgency is to include a countdown clock in your email. As a matter of fact, according to world data, you can actually expect an increase in your click-through rates by having that countdown clock, because as you're watching those seconds roll by, it just underscores that time is running out. It's a visual message to you that just really reminds you you're running out of time, you need to act now. It really underscores that urgency. Now, I'm sure many of you probably own the Taylor Swift squirrel pajamas, right? I can't see a show of hands here, but I'm sure many of you are nodding yes, because these are in fact the squirrel pajamas that were featured in the Never Ever Ever Getting Back Together Again video. Now, of course, I'm having a little fun with you, but I love this email example, and I'd like to show it because it just oozes urgency. So in the subject line, she says it's the Taylor Swift daily deal. And then she says, while supplies last, ends tonight, today only. And she does a fabulous job of changing the question from, do I want a pair of squirrel pajamas to, can I get a pair before they run out? Okay, she's really got a lot of urgency going on there. She's making it work very hard. Here's another good example. This is in a B2B setting. I'm holding one of the last 15 seats for you. Please RSVP today. And you think, oh my goodness, there's only 15 seats left. Someone's holding one of them for me, but they're disappearing quickly. They might even let mine go. I'd better respond today. It really ratchets up that urgency with the specificity there. It's one of the last 15 seats. Not just, seats are running out, but or I'm holding one of the 15, but I'm holding one of the last 15 for you. It really feels like there's urgency there. Now let's cross over to the other side of the scarcity principle, which is exclusivity, or only reserved for a certain group of people. So here we have last chance to join Expedia Rewards before the public launch. Well, wait a minute. I can still join after this date? Sure, you can join when the public joins, but who wants to do that, right? We all like to get in before everyone else. We all like to feel like we're part of a special group, that we're getting access to something that not everyone else can. And that's why this is such a strong subject line. It has such strong psychological appeal. It's your last chance to get in before everyone else can, so you can be special. Here we have a restaurant, and they say new menu, and you're the first to try. Order before anyone else. And that feels really good. Again, we like to do things that not everyone else can. We like to get in before other people are allowed to. Here we have an email from the IAPP. This is the International Association of Privacy Professionals. But as you read the subject line, you realize that this email doesn't go to anybody who's a privacy professional. It doesn't even go to everyone who's a member of the IAPP. It only goes to a select subgroup. It says new credential just for CIPP certified pros. And when you see that subject line, you realize that this is only going to a select group, a certain group of people. You realize it's meant for you, and you feel like you're part of a special group. Here's a exclusive survey from Ad Age, but what I like about the subject line is how special they make you feel. They say you have been selected for your expertise. So imagine you've just gotten into the office in the morning, you turn on your computer, you're scanning your inbox, and you see this subject line, and you just sit up a little straighter at your desk, and you think, finally, somebody realizes just how smart I am, just what an expert I am. It feels good, and you don't stop to think, oh, gee, I wonder if they sent this to everybody who reads Ad Age. Because, again, these are decision-making shortcuts. We're not stopping to think about things. We're not weighing the pros and cons and rationally dissecting the message and thinking a lot about it logically. We're responding emotionally. We're using decision defaults and decision-making shortcuts. And we see something like this, and it just feels good. And we're like, yes, I feel part of a select group. And that's why it's so powerful and why it works. Now, we've talked about exclusivity in terms of your product or service being exclusive, or your target audience being exclusive. The other area where you can use exclusivity is your source. As a matter of fact, you can expect a 22% lift in your opening rates if you have an email-only offer. So in this particular email, they've got a double use of exclusivity. It says only an email and only for you. So only an email is the source, only for you is the target, but they've got 2 hits of exclusivity. But the idea that this offer is only available in email is enough to increase the opening rate by 22%. So your takeaway or your action is to make people feel special or make them feel time pressed, the 2 halves of the scarcity principle, exclusivity and urgency. But if you can use either of those, or both for that matter, in your emails, you can expect a greater likelihood that people are going to open them and engage with them. All right, our third human behavior hack for email is the ripple effect of the consistency principle. And this is very interesting. What social scientists have found is once people make a decision, they like to remain consistent with it when future opportunities arise. And they often do so giving the decision little to no thought. Once they've made one decision, they just like to remain consistent with it, and it's kind of an automatic response. So what does this mean to us as email marketers? What it means is if we can get someone to say yes once, we're much more likely to get them to say yes a second time, a third time, a fourth time. And this is particularly true if our first request or our first ask is relatively small. So what we want to do is we want to remember that once people commit, they like to remain consistent, and that first small yes can lead to subsequent larger ones. We can escalate our asks. So let's take a look at how we can use that in email marketing. Here's an email from Semper International, and they're trying to present a candidate. They're a recruiting company, and they're trying to present a candidate to me. The only thing is I don't do business with them. I didn't advertise an opening for a particular candidate, and in fact, I didn't even have an opening. But they blunt that by saying to me, thank you for your ongoing support, want to help out again. So they're trying to pitch me, and even though I haven't contacted them, they're saying, hey, look, you've helped us out in the past, help us out this time. And it gets me to open up the email and say, all right, yes, I'll probably do this, because I don't have to think about this as if they were a brand new company. I just default to that decision-making shortcut. Yes, I've done business with them in the past, I can do it again. Here we have Amtrak, which is the train company, and they say, you've registered, now earn double days. So earlier they had sent out an email saying, if you want to earn double points during our promotion period, you need to sign up now. And so anyone who signed up then got a subsequent email that said, okay, the promotion period is now upon us. Now's the time to buy your train ticket. You signed up for the double points. You intended to buy a train ticket. Now's the time to do it. So they got that first ask, and then they got the first yes with a small ask, and then they made a larger ask to get the next yes. Here we have Delta, and they're offering a 30-day Delta Sky Club membership for just $90. And the reason they do that is they know that anyone who says yes to the 30 days is much more likely at the end of that 30 days, when Delta comes back to them and offers them a full year membership, they're much more likely to say yes. They said yes to the 30-day one, then they're much more likely to say yes to a larger one. Get the first small yes and then increase your ask. Now, I'm sure many of you know that in the US we just had a presidential election recently, and I watched with interest because both of the leading candidates tapped into some of these human behavior hacks with their emails. So I want to share a couple of them with you. This one was from Trump. This was before he was elected. He was getting ready to do a presidential debate. And so he sent out an email and he asked people if they would take a survey to help him prepare for the upcoming debate. So if you said that you wanted to, you would click the Take the Survey button, and then that would take you to the survey, and it was several pages long, and you would answer question after question after question. Then you would enter your information to submit your responses, and then the confirmation page would come up, and at that point, he would ask you to make a donation. And he knew, at least for a segment of his target market, it was better to do this than to simply send a single email that right away asked for a donation. What he wanted to do was get the momentum going, get that series of yeses. Yes, I'll open the email. Yes, I'll agree to take the survey. Yes, I'll answer this question and this question and this question. And yes, I'll submit it. And then he was hoping for the final yes, which was, yes, I'll make a donation. So he wanted to get that momentum going, that series of yeses. And now here's an interesting email. This is an email for an insurance company. And very often when someone's trying to sell you insurance via email, they'll have a button that says, get a free quote. But this particular company, Globe Life, did something different. They said, get free information. And getting free information just seems like a little bit smaller of an ask. There's less of a commitment. You're not asking for the quote. You're just asking for some information. And of course, once you click that and they send that, then next they're going to ask you if you'd like a quote. And then after that, they're going to ask you to make a purchase. But they're escalating their ask. They're making it seem like a very simple question, a very simple request, something very easy to say yes to. So our takeaway or our action here is to escalate your asks and to remind people of their earlier yeses. If they've said yes to you once before, remind them so that they don't think about you as if you're a brand new company. Remind them they've already done business with you, they've already vetted you. It's easy to just say yes again to go along with it. And then start small and then increase your asks. All right, our fourth human behavior hack is why you'll sell more using social proof. And what social scientists have found is when people are uncertain of what decision to make, what they'll do is they'll look to others, particularly others like themselves, and they'll follow their lead. So we do what other people do, especially if they're like us. Back when we were children, if our parents said to us, if everyone jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? Well, sadly, the answer is probably yes. We do what other people do, particularly if they're like us and particularly if we're not sure what decision to make. So as email marketers, we can use this. This is very, very powerful. It's a very common decision to fall. So back to politics for a second. Here we have another leading candidate. This was Hillary Clinton. And she says 347 people in your area have donated this month. Will you join your neighbors? So she's not talking about the people across America who have donated or the people in the Democratic Party. She's talking about the people in your area. She uses words like your area, join your neighbors. So she wants you to feel that the people like you, the people living around you, are supporting her. But Donald Trump also was doing the same thing. He said, you know, I've already heard from several folks in your community. Don't be the only Trump supporter in your neighborhood without a sign. So he's trying to make you feel that people like you, people who live around you, are supporting him. So both of them were using these human behavior hacks. Here's another example. This is from B2B marketing. They say your marketing peers' top downloads from the first half of 2016. Now, there's so much information out there. It's hard for us sometimes to stay on top of it all. But when we see this, we're like, oh, great, it's my marketing peers. So there's social proof right there. And then it's the top downloads, more social proof. So 2 hits of social proof in this subject line, good use of it. Here's an interesting approach. Here they're using social proof on me, and then they're asking me to turn around and apply it against people I know. This is for a conference, and they say, see who's coming to the Direct Exchange conference and invite your colleagues. And they want me to look and see who else is already registered, because they know if I see people that have similar titles to mine or work at agencies that are similar to mine or that do a job that's similar to mine, I'll think, gee, I should probably go too. And then if I turn around and I forward this to people that I know, they might think, oh, gee, Nancy is going to this. Maybe I should too, because she and I do similar things at our job. So if she thinks it's a good conference, maybe I should go as well. So it's social proof exerted on me, and then they ask me to turn around and exert it on other people that I know. And here we've got a really interesting example. I said that we have a tendency to do what people like us do. So here's a company that says, hi, Sam, men like you who are enjoying life in their 40s, working hard to earn a good salary, and in the field of healthcare, protect their future with these 2 insurance policies. So they're helping you think, wow, these are really people like me. They're, you know, same gender, same age, same profession. You know, how much more like me can they be? So really good use of social proof there. And you know, another way to use social proof, if you don't have all of that detailed data, is to just talk about the number of people. Here we say join more than 6 million people. And when you think that many people are doing something, you feel, wow, maybe I should as well. So saying something is the most popular or the most frequently purchased or the most frequently asked or has gotten lots of likes or lots of referrals or lots of endorsements, or that it's, you know, it's been around for a long time, or it's a popular choice. These are all great ways to tap into the notion of social proof. So again, show your target that others have already done what you want them to do. They're going to be a little bit undecided. Show them that other people have already taken the action that you want them to take. Okay, human behavior hack number 5, when negative can deliver positive results. So in marketing, we're trained to focus on positive, right? We want to talk about all the wonderful things, all the advantages and benefits that are going to come to you if you buy our products and services. And that's terrific, and I would never suggest that we walk away from benefits. However, as email marketers, we need to know about loss aversion, because social scientists and behavioral economists have found that people are twice as motivated to avoid pain as they are to achieve gain. We're twice as motivated to avoid pain as we are to achieve gain. So again, while I would never walk away from benefits, I would suggest that we use just a little well-placed loss aversion. So let's look at how we can do that. So here we have an email from HP, Hewlett-Packard, and they say you have no idea what you've missed. So right away you think, oh my gosh, I've missed out on something. Or here we have Jay Peterman, and they say you better watch out. If you're holding out for this stuff to go on sale, don't. It probably won't be around that long. And that happens to us a lot. We see something and we think, oh, maybe I'd like to get that. Well, maybe I'll wait till it goes on sale. And they're going right to the heart of that, saying, you're going to be disappointed. You'll very likely be disappointed if you're going to hold off. You'd better buy now. Here we have 7 emails you should never send. Now, they could have turned this around and used the positive version of that. They could have said 7 emails you should always send. And that would be interesting. And we would want to know what those 7 emails are. But what we really want to know is the 7 emails we should never send, because those are the ones we want to avoid. We don't want to make that mistake. Here we have the Inbound conference, and they say don't pay an extra $300 for inbound. Now, they could have said save $300, which would have been the positive side, but they use that loss aversion. Don't pay an extra $300. Here's something from Kissmetrics, and they say why your conversions suck and how to fix it. And this is important because they didn't just stop at why your conversions suck. because at that point somebody might say, well, I don't know, I don't know how to fix them. I don't know what to do. It is what it is. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. But by saying that they know how to fix it, it encourages people to go on. It's like, all right, I have a problem, but these people have the solution for me. Similar here, they say many drivers in Massachusetts are overpaying. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be overpaying. But inside they tell you, well, we can help you find cheaper insurance. We'll make it easier to compare rates so that you can find good coverage. Here we have the 5 mistakes dentists make with business expenses. Free guide shows you how to avoid them. So again, it's like you want to avoid these mistakes. This guide is going to show you how to avoid them. So your action is to help people avoid mistakes. Nobody wants to make a wrong move. Nobody wants to make a mistake. So showing people how they can avoid mistakes is a good way to get people to engage with your email. All right, our 6th human behavior hack is how availability bias turns doubters into buyers. And these days, a lot of times our prospective customers are in fact doubters. They're not really sure whether they should believe us as marketers. Can they believe everything that we say? Is it really going to be worth the time, the effort, the money to switch? Is our product or our service really better than the current solution? So people, they're a little skeptical. But we can overcome that by tapping into availability bias. And here's what availability bias is. Social scientists have found that people will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how readily they can recall an example. And in this case, the likelihood of an event happening, the event would be whether or not they need your product or service. And they'll judge the likelihood of whether or not they need it based on how readily they can recall an example. So it's all about personal relevance. If something can be recalled or imagined, they feel it's more likely to happen. So it's more likely I'm going to need your product or service if I can think of a time in the past when it would have come in handy. So what we want to do is before we ask people to make a purchase, we want to get them to think of a time in the past when having our product or service would have been very helpful, or even imagine a time in the future when it could fit into their lifestyle. So let's take a look. Here we have an email from Sharper Image, and they're trying to sell me a weather alert emergency hand crank radio. I know you don't know me well, but trust me when I say I am not a hand crank kind of a girl, okay? I believe that electricity was invented for a reason. So normally I wouldn't take a second look at an email like this. However, the night before I received it, I was watching TV. The evening news came on, and it was filled with stories about a storm that was blowing through the area and all of the neighborhoods around me that were losing power. So it was the last thing I saw before I went to sleep. Got up the next morning. We still had power, fortunately. I turned on my computer. I'm looking at my emails, and I see this. And I think, I wonder, maybe I do need an emergency hand crank radio. Maybe it would come in handy. Or here's an example from Barack Obama, President Obama. He was a big believer in behavioral science. In fact, he signed an executive order encouraging the various U.S. government agencies to tap into the work of behavioral economists and social scientists. And I know that in Great Britain, they have something known as a nudge unit, which is very similar, and several other countries have done this as well. But Barack Obama was a big believer in behavioral economics and social science because he knew how powerful it was. It helped him get elected. This is an email from his re-election campaign. And at the top, it invited you to make a donation by midnight that night. And if you did, you'd be entered to win dinner with Barack. But you might think, well, this is going to people all across the country. What's the likelihood that I'm going to win? But then you look at this image that goes with the email, and you go, oh, it's not going to be one of those long rectangular tables. It's a small round one. There's only like 8 people. I'll be sitting to the president's right. My guest will be to his left. Suddenly you could see it. You could envision it. You could imagine it. It became that much more real, and this did very well for him. Here's an example from the Boston Globe. They wanted Globe subscribers to buy gift subscriptions for people they knew, but they didn't say, hey, do you know someone who would like a Globe gift subscription? Nor did they say, buy a gift subscription for someone you know. Instead, they said, bostonglobe.com is an incredible gift for your, and then they list 10 different descriptors, your avid reader, your political junkie, your sports fan. And as you read each of those, you think of the person you know who fits that description. Oh, my grandfather's an avid reader. My uncle's a political junkie. My daughter away at university is a sports fan. And by the time you finish, you've come to the conclusion that you know 10 people that would enjoy a bostonglobe.com gift subscription. Here we've got a great use of availability bias right in the subject line. They say, win a Vegas bachelorette bash for 4. Who will you take? And you think, oh my goodness, I have 6 bridesmaids. Which 2 am I going to leave behind? Now, you haven't even opened the email, let alone won the contest, but already you're thinking ahead to, I have 6 bridesmaids, they tell me I can only take 4. Great use of availability bias. And in this last example, there was an insurance company trying to sell disability insurance to dentists. But the problem is, if you're not disabled, if you're feeling healthy and able-bodied, you don't think you need it. So instead, they said, have you heard your colleagues complain about low back pain, carpal tunnel syndrome? And that gets people thinking. And they're like, oh yeah, the last dental association meeting I went to, Dr. Smith from across town wasn't there. Someone said he was in bed with back pain. And it makes you think, ooh, this really could be something that could happen to me. It makes it more real. So your takeaway or your action is to stir people's memories or imaginations before you ask them to respond. All right, our 7th human behavior hack is what instantly makes you look better than the competition. And these days, this is very important because these days there are a lot of parity products. There was a time when many companies had unique selling propositions. They had a product or a service that nobody else had. But today, we have a lot of competition, and it's very common that there's a company that sells a product or a service that's very similar, if not exactly like ours. So it's harder to distinguish ourselves. But one way that you can make yourself look better than the competition is to tap into something known as the authority principle. And what social scientists and behavioral economists have found is ever since we are children, we're taught to recognize and respect authority. So by the time we're adults, it's ingrained in us. So we recognize and respect authority. And if the authority happens to be an expert, we assume they've done the work for us. So if an authority tells us something, we're much more likely to believe it. And if they tell us to do something, we're much more likely to do it. And if an authority or an expert makes a recommendation, we believe they're the subject matter expert. They've done all the research. They know what they're talking about. So how do we as email marketers use that in our emails? Well, here we have Connecticut's World's Best Inn. And it says that Condé Nast Traveler and Travel and Leisure and AAA all say that this is a terrific inn. So if you've got an endorsement like that, you think, great, I'm not going to research all these other inns. These are the experts. They say this is the best rated inn. Or here we have the Container Store. They're selling a closet organizing system. So if it's your job to go out and buy a closet organizing system and you see this ad that says Consumer Reports and ShopSmart magazine say this is the best of the bunch, you think, great. I can stop my research right here. I'm not going to go through the tedious process of comparing closet organizers. These guys say they're the best of the bunch. That sounds good. Here we have Globe Life continues to receive an A+ superior rating from AM Best Company. Now, there are a lot of companies that sell insurance, but if AM Best says these guys are superior, that's great. That makes them skyrocket or jump ahead to the #1 position. It makes them look better than the competition. Here we have airport employees spill travel secrets. Now, you may not think of airport employees, flight attendants or pilots as authorities or experts. However, when it comes to travel, they are most definitely authorities and experts. And so if they're going to talk to you about travel, you're going to believe what they say. They're going to have a more informed opinion, and so you'll trust them. The other interesting thing about flight attendants and pilots is they're in uniform. And when we see someone in uniform, that automatically suggests to us that they're authorities. The idea of a uniform conveys status and authority. And when we see a uniform, we think, oh, that person's an authority. Here's a great example, okay? This is a health insurance company, and they're showing someone who looks like she's a doctor. They're not saying she's a doctor. They're not identifying her as a doctor, but simply having her there in that white lab coat and with the stethoscope around her neck, we think, ooh, instant authority, and that just lends credibility to this email message. The other people we think of as authorities are celebrities. Stars, performers, athletes, and while they may be very, very good at what they do, they're not necessarily authorities in what they're selling. However, their celebrity status spills over and we think of them as authorities. Here we have Katy Perry. She's a singer, but she's talking about an acne cream. Now, she's not a chemist. She's not a cosmetologist, so she's not an expert in that field. She's really not an expert on clear skin, but because she's a singer, because she looks great in her music videos, and when we see her on stage, we believe her. We think of her as an expert. We allow her to be an expert in this field. So what you want to remember is to invoke perceived experts. in your email marketing. You know, cite the experts, cite the people that your target audience perceives to be experts, and that will take you and make you look better than the competition. All right, our 8th human behavior hack of the 10 of them is the one thing to say to increase response. And as you're listening, you might think, gee, Nancy, I don't know. There's a lot of us listening. Some of us sell in a B2B environment. Some of us sell in a B2C environment, you know, business to business or business to consumer. Some of us are selling products or services. They're very different. Is there really one thing that we can all say that will increase response? Well, the answer is yes, there is. And that is, you want to give people the reason why. Tell them why you want them to do what you're asking them to do, because social scientists have found that people are more likely to do what you ask them to do if you give them the reason why. And a great way to give them the reason why is to use the word because. Ellen Langer is a Harvard University researcher and professor, and she discovered that the word because is something known as a compliance trigger. When we see or hear the word because, we just automatically start to nod yes without fully processing what comes next. We assume that whatever comes after that word because is a good, logical, legitimate reason. So when we get to the word because, we just start to nod up and down yes. We're nodding yes, we're agreeing. So how do we use this in our email marketing? Well, here we have an email that begins, the very first word is because we expect your organization. You know, so right away it's like, oh, okay, and we start to nod yes. Or here we have an email that says your auto insurance company is hiding discounts from you. Why? Because if everyone asked for all the discounts that apply, they'd save an average of $455 a year. So they're giving that reason why. Here we have something from Smith & Wollensky. They're a restaurant, and they say because April is taxing enough. Now here in the U.S., April is when people have to pay their income tax. So they're having a little fun with it. But again, they're using that magic word because. You know, it doesn't have to be an ironclad, solid, bulletproof reason, a really, really good, well thought out reason. There just has to be some reason there. You know, because April is taxing enough. Now you don't always have to use the word because. You just have to provide that reason why. Here, Citibank says, we've listened to you, and we know that your days are hectic. You need answers fast, so we've enhanced CitiCards.com. Or here, ProFlower says, Nancy, you're officially running out of time. You only have 3 days left to guarantee Mother's Day delivery. So they're providing that reason why. And of course, lists of reasons are always very, very powerful. Here we have the top 5 reasons AmeriQuote works. So they're giving you not one reason why, but 5. So your takeaway or your action is legitimize your request with a reason. Give people the reason why you want them to do what you're asking them to do. Our 9th human behavior hack is the journalist's secret that boosts email readership. And if anyone went to journalism school like I did, you know that they teach you right away about the 5 W's and the 1 H. The 5 W's and the 1 H are who, what, where, when, why, and how. And in journalism school, they teach you to write your stories and answer those questions because people want those answers. And if you've answered the question in your story, people will read your story. George Lowenstein actually talks about something known as information gap theory. He's a neuroeconomist. And what he found is if there's a gap between what you know and what you want to know, you will take action to close that gap. And you can use the 5 W's and the 1 H to get people to realize they have a gap in information. Journalists also know about the power of numbers and lists, and we'll get to that in just a second. But let me show you how easy it is, just in your subject lines, to use the 5 W's and the 1 H to make people want to go further. So here we have, who doesn't want to make their marketing easier? What do 90% of your audience have in common? Where to get good headlines? When it's okay for your brand to be risque? Why do I need life insurance? How to guarantee a decision maker meeting when selling to the government? And then, so those who, what, where, when, why, and how, great uses of the 5 W's and the 1 H. Journalists also know the power of numbers and lists in their emails. And numbers work particularly well for a couple of reasons. For one, they stand out in a sea of letters, and as we're skimming and scanning, they jump out and they pull the eye in. The other thing about numbers is numbers promise ease and order, and the human brain craves ease and order. Now, some tests show that you should use an odd number, that odd numbers are perceived as more credible. They seem more exact, and so they do better. However, there was a Harvard University study that said 10 and multiples of 10 do particularly well, and it's because they're cognitively fluent, which means they're easier for the brain to process. And social scientists think it might be because we grew up counting on our fingers, right? We have 10 fingers. So 10 and multiples of 10 do very well. Odd numbers can also do well for you. So your takeaway or your action is offer to fill an information gap. That will encourage people to engage with your email marketing. Offer to fill an information gap. All right, we're up to our 10th and final hack, and that is which days are best for success. And I'm not going to talk to you now about the fact that people are constantly checking their email, even on the weekends, so that maybe you should send your email on the weekends. Nor am I going to say avoid sending emails on Mondays because people are very, very busy. They've just gotten back into the office and they've got a lot of demands on their time. There are lots of other studies out there that talk about these things, and the truth of the matter is you should really test, because only in testing will you find what's right for you, for your company, your product, your target market. My answer to which days are best for success is holidays and special celebrations. And the reason for that is holidays and special celebrations stand out. And there's something known as the von Restorff effect, which holds that people notice and remember things that are different, things that stick out, things that stand out. And when you think about it, every Wednesday is just like every other Wednesday, except when it's a holiday or a special occasion. Those are the things that people remember. So use that in your email marketing. So you might want to tap into some of the major holidays like Easter or Christmas or Hanukkah, ones that are very common and popular and well known. But you can also look into some of the lesser known ones. For example, there's National Pi Day. For any of you mathematicians in the audience, that's the day that celebrates the mathematical formula for pi. In this particular case, Land's End was celebrating it on March 14th, which is 3/14. So that's a more obscure holiday, but there are lots of them. One of my favorites happens to be National Chardonnay Day. That's one we can all get behind. So, you can look and you can find a special celebration, a special holiday, whether it's national or international, that you can tie in with your product. Here, if you're a restaurant, Chardonnay Day works. If you're a wine company, certainly. But even if you're selling something else, you could say, raise a glass today as we celebrate National Chardonnay Day, and come in and join us at our special shopping event, no matter what it is you happen to be selling. You can also look to your customers for special celebrations or special occasions. It could be your customer's anniversary, maybe the anniversary of their first purchase or the anniversary of the date that they joined your loyalty program. It could be their birthday. And if you don't have that data, you can look at your own company data. Maybe you can celebrate, your company's birthday. It could be your company's birthday, but you're giving customers a special birthday gift. Or it could be Founders Day, or it could be the introduction of a new product or the opening of a new plant. There are definitely different things that you can flag as special occasions. You can create your own special holiday. Here PTI says, introducing Orange Tuesday. Move over Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Orange Tuesday has arrived. So they've designated their own holiday. They've made it orange because PTI uses orange as a corporate color, but they've created a day specially for them. And of course, this is one of my favorite examples. This is Happy National Nancy Day from Edible Arrangements. I don't know if there are any other Nancys out there listening. If there are, you're going to love this. If your name isn't Nancy, you're not going to think it's a big deal at all. But of course, when Edible Arrangements sent this out, they would put in the target audience member's name. So it would be Happy National Jacob Day, for example. So when you see your name, it's like, wow, how cool, a day just for me. It really engages you. So remember, our takeaway here is you want to piggyback on holidays or create your own, because days that are different, holidays and special occasions, are the days that stand out and they attract interest. So we've covered 10 human behavior hacks. They're all based on neuroscience and behavioral economics and social science. So they're proven to work in the marketplace. We know why they have such strong psychological appeal. So take them, use them. They're very easy to implement. Use them in your email marketing and watch your engagement and your response rates skyrocket. Now, we've only covered 10, and the truth is there are a lot more. So if anybody would like a cheat sheet that summarizes some of the ones we talked about today, but adds in a couple of others that we didn't have time for, please contact me. You send me an email. I will email you a PDF of the cheat sheet. It's a simple, quick one-pager, but you'll be able to refer to it and use it and use these techniques as you're developing or you're approving the email marketing for your companies. So thank you very much. It's been an honor and a delight to be able to share this information with you. And I think, Jacob, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nancy, for your content here and your presentation. So very much interesting insights you share with us. And I'm sure we have learned a lot during this time we spent together with you. We have a few audience questions here, and I also advise everybody in the audience that have more questions, please enter them into the question box and we try to answer as many as possible since we have a few minutes left here. One question is of course around differences on these rules and wordings and psychological effects versus geographical and cultural differences. For example, in the Nordics versus Europe versus America. Have you come across any data on differences on that level, how these work?
Yes, that's a very, very good question, and I think I can answer it in two different ways. So the first thing I'll say is there's been a lot of research into these decision-making shortcuts, and the research comes from countries all over the world, and it seems that these are hardwired human behaviors that are fairly universal. So many, many, many of them are universal. That said, there are certain cultural and regional differences. You know, for example, in the U.S. and kind of in the, you know, well, I'll use the U.S. because that's what I know best, but, you know, we have a tendency to want to feel exclusive, right? We want to feel better than or different than, whereas in Asia, there's less emphasis on the individual and much more emphasis on the team. So you might want to, you know, talk about making the team feel special, the team feel exclusive versus any individual on that team. There are certainly, I think, there can be differences in terms of language, in terms of slang that's used. There could be regional differences in terms of what's celebrated in a particular region, whether it's a local holiday or a festival or a food, for example. You know, so there are different things that you can key off of that are very specific to a particular target market, and in fact that does make for good email marketing, or good marketing of any kind really, because the more customized and relevant the message is, the more likely the person is to respond. So, you know, you definitely want to think in terms of what's going to play best for your audience, but as we pull back and look at the, you know, 50,000 foot version here, a lot of these decision-making shortcuts are in fact hardwired human behaviors and have a tendency to manifest themselves from person to person, country to country, culture to culture. I do a couple of other presentations where I actually cite studies from England and Norway and China, and it's just very interesting that the researchers are all finding the same things, that human beings have a tendency to just respond in certain automatic, instinctive, reflexive ways. So I hope that answers your question. It's a very good one, and I think that, you know, it's a matter of degree is the answer.
Yes, thank you for that. That's a very good answer to the question. Here's a quick one. I don't know if it's possible to answer, but what do you think is a good open rate and a good click rate for an email?
That's a good question as well, and it has to do with a few different things. It has to do with whether you're mailing to your customers or to prospects. It has to do with how good your list is, how qualified it is. It has to do with what you're asking people to do, whether they're clicking through to purchase or clicking through to download something free. So you know, there's a wide range there. So from my personal experience, I have seen you know, double-digit open rates that have marked very successful emails. I've seen single-digit open rates that have again marked very successful emails. In terms of click-through rate, the exact same thing applies. You know, you can get even a fraction of a percentage on a click-through rate and still have it be very successful for the particular marketing effort, or you can have, you know, a double-digit click-through rate and actually even be maybe a little disappointed that you didn't get more given what your particular offer and audience was. So it's kind of a fallacy to say that oh, there should be a, you know, a 2% response rate across the board. It just it doesn't hold, because you really need to drill into again who your audience is, how good your list is, what your ask is, how well known you are to the audience that you're emailing to. So, so the best answer, I think, is to benchmark against your previous responses and always be in that continuous improvement loop. You know, look at what your last campaign did, try to beat that on some of those key metrics. Once you've done that, try to beat that and just keep trying to continually improve and benchmark against yourself. Or if you're able to get information about your competitors who are similar to you in the same industry and you can benchmark against them, that's great, although that information isn't always easy to come by.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. I totally agree. So another question here is, do you think there's any specific timing on the day that's better than another to send emails? That's a really question here, or audience question.
So I've quoted a source, a company called World Data a couple of times in this presentation, and they actually undertake an annual comprehensive study, and every year they will issue their calendar of the best and worst days and times to email. And so anyone who's interested in that, I would encourage you to go to the World Data site and access that information. It's provided for free, and it's very interesting, and it shifts slightly every year. It's slightly different, and but they do this massive study where they study all these different email senders, and they track the response, and they literally publish a calendar, that day by day says, yes, these are good days this week, these are bad days this week, this is a good time, that's a bad time. Generally speaking, and I said this earlier, a lot of studies have found that Mondays can be difficult because people have a lot on their plate. They've just gotten back into the office, but not every company finds that to be true. Some people are finding that weekends work very well for them. Other companies test that, and they're finding weekends don't really work well for them. So, the real answer is to test. But if you want to take a look at a comprehensive study, go to World Data and access that free information. It's really pretty interesting.
That's great. That's great. I'm sure everybody in the audience will log into that site now. Another question here is, do you have any experience if simple text emails without images works better than HTML emails with a lot of rich layout and a lot of design and pictures? Have you any thoughts about that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, a couple of my clients have found exactly that the text ones are working better for them. And I think that the reason could be that, when you and I emailed each other, we don't create these, HTML image-rich emails. We just, email to each other text. And so they feel a little bit more real and authentic. They might even feel more official and business-like. It's interesting that the ones that the clients that are finding that this works better for them are more business-to-business or are selling more business-like serious products. So more, things in the financial field, for example. So I think other email marketers want to have the HTML with the visuals because it helps reinforce their brand, or because seeing the product or seeing the offer helps lift response. But it is interesting, we kind of, almost everybody was doing the HTML with with color and visuals, and people were starting to incorporate GIFs and links to videos, and for some people all of that is working very, very well. But there's a small subsegment, if you will, where they're finding that simple plain text is the way to go. So if you have a suspicion that might work for your company or for your product, I would definitely suggest testing it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And related question to that is, have you thought about emojis in subject lines and in emails? Do that work well if you have a smile in the subject line, or using a emojis in order to make it a bit more fun and relaxed tonality?
Yes, it's funny, Jacob. I'm a convert. My thinking has evolved on that. When I was first asked the question quite some time ago, I said, I'm not a big fan of emojis. I think that they might even cheapen your brand. And I have since converted to the belief that emojis actually help, because what happens is they stand out in your inbox. So as you're scanning your inbox, if there's that, colored, that 4-color emoji or even 2-color emoji, it focuses your eye, and we notice things that stand out. We notice things that are different. So for now, I've seen some studies indicating that emojis are actually increasing the likelihood that your email will get opened. If you have an emoji in your subject line, it will increase the likelihood that someone will open your email. And I believe that that's true, and I believe that that will remain true until everybody starts to use it. And then when you open up your email and you look at your inbox and there's, emoji after emoji after emoji after emoji right down the line, then they're going to, I think, cancel out the, it cancels out the effectiveness. It cancels each other out. But for now, when not everybody is using them, it does seem to increase the likelihood that people will notice and open your email.
Interesting response from you. Yeah, totally. We have tried that ourselves and tested a bit, and we can actually feel that it's working a bit better as well if you, at the right email, add in a smiley or something like that. So interesting to hear that. It corroborates well with our experiences here locally.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah. Okay, actually we have so many interesting questions here. So we have taking a few extra minutes over the hour. So I think it's time to wrap up, and thank you so much, Nancy, for your content and your expertise on these topics. We have really enjoyed your presentation and all your insights you have so generously shared with us here today. And I'm sure we can take a lot of insights and actionable things with us right off the bat here, so we can start producing better email campaigns in 15 minutes time here. So thank you so much for that, and looking forward to hear more from you in the future. I don't know if you have any books or speaking engagement coming up here. Where will you be next time?
So I'm actually talking to, it's so funny you should say that, I'm talking to somebody about a book. I was approached by a publishing company, so stay tuned, send good thoughts. Hopefully that will work out. I don't know yet, but if it does, I'll certainly let you know. I have my fingers crossed. But if anyone thinks of any questions or wants to, get in touch in the future, my contact information is there on the screen. I would love to hear from people, and follow me on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, because as speaking engagements come up, I do post them. So, and again, thank you very much, Jacob and Bright Vision, and everybody for listening. I've really enjoyed this.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Nancy, and thank you everybody listening in, and wish you both a great day. For you, Nancy, it's just beginning, and for us in the Nordics and Europe, it's soon time to go home, actually. So thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.